YouTube chat. Hello. I recently played, as a 38-year-old man, the best session of strategy gaming I have ever played in my life. I've been playing strategy games since I was 3, maybe. So the best in 35 years. I played a mission of Frosthaven where, like, everything that I want from a strategy game happened at the same time over the course of 2 hours, and it just was perfect. Frosthaven is a game I've been playing for about a year now. It's a board game with a couple of different computer adaptations. You can play it on Tabletop Simulator and recently a video game version of it, which is a fairly faithful adaptation released into early access. So that's like in early access. It doesn't have all the content yet and everything, but I've been playing it a bit on stream. Yeah, I've been playing it for about a year, and there was this moment with Frosthaven where I played a mission and I was like, that was like incredibly finely balanced. Wow. It's like really lucky that I had that mission play out the way that it did, such that it came down to the final turn and was really close and I was engaged the entire way. Given how many complex systems are going on in this game and stuff, it's just really surprising to me that that happened. That's so cool. I'm really appreciative of that. And then it happened again the next 2 missions, and I was like, holy fuck, this game's just really good. So, Frosthaven's a good game. I've been playing it a lot, and I recently played a mission that was just so good that I had to make an entire presentation about it. A lot of people are also asking all the time, like, hey, do you have like an intro to Frosthaven? I want to understand the rules, but it's a bit overwhelming and stuff. And so I will also go over like sort of an introduction to the game and explain what's going on in it here, so that if you want to watch me play Frosthaven or start playing Frosthaven yourself, you have a foot in the door. So first off, though, I want to talk a little bit about me and why this game's so good for me, so that you can be like, oh, I want that too. This might be a game for me. Or you can be like, oh, I want something completely different. Fuck that game. Some things that I have noticed over the course of my life that I really enjoy from games are emergent storytelling, a long campaign. So I want a game to go on for a long time and gradually kind of like grow as you progress. Maybe Stardew Valley is like the best example of that, where like you start off with a small farm and then like you unlock the mines and you talk to the villagers and you marry someone and stuff. Like there's just gradual progression as you go through the game. I want unique decisions. And because I want unique decisions, I tend to prefer, if there is random number generation, if there's randomness in the game, I tend to prefer it to be randomness which can be different, like differently weighted at different times. So I really tend to like games with decks more than I like games with dice, because if you roll a d20 and you get a 1 and you fail, then the next time you roll it, you could just get a 1 again and fail again. Nothing's like changed about your die roll the next time other than the consequences of you failing the previous one. Whereas if you're playing out of a deck of cards, if you like draw a hand which is all of your worst cards on one turn, then the next turn you're going to draw a hand which is all of your best cards, because that's how it works. The cards that are left in the deck are the ones that aren't your worst cards. And I find that that contributes immensely to decision making being interesting for me. The fact that there are constantly like different distributions of possible outcomes coming up because of what I've seen so far. So I really like that. I like simple systems which become complex via their interactions. The way this was advertised to me when I was like 5 was the idea of a game being minutes to learn and a lifetime to master. I can't remember what game had that on its packaging when I was like 5, but whoever came up with that one, like, great job. Well done. Yeah, that's the sort of game that I want. I want the systems to be fairly straightforward, but then I want the actual like use of those systems on the board or whatever to be just incredibly, incredibly complicated. Chess is a common example of a game which takes minutes to learn and a lifetime to master. And I really want cooperation between players. This is something I've sort of grown into over the course of my life, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a variety of ways for the next like 30 minutes probably. I don't mind competition in theory. I grew up competing at games. I played chess as a kid, and I played Magic the Gathering as a kid. I got very into hearts on Yahoo games when I was like 13. uh, and yeah, I liked competing against other players. But increasingly, as I've like grown up in the world, I've found that systems of competition between players just get ruined by one person so often. Like somebody cheats, and then everything's just not working anymore. Or somebody in your little community, whether it be at a game store or a community online, somebody might be acting inappropriately and making other people uncomfortable and stuff like that. And again, it's very hard to deal with that in a competitive environment. If you kick somebody out because they're making people feel uncomfortable, then the veracity of the integrity of the competition starts to come into question. Like, did you really win that tournament when some of us weren't even allowed to play? Sorts of things happen. And I found that competitive spaces are much worse at pruning bad actors from the community than cooperative spaces. So I tend to prefer cooperative spaces in the games that I apply. I feel like this is like perhaps the simplest way to illustrate why that's better. If you're playing a cooperative game, you try to win with your team, and you try to make sure you and your teammates are playing a fair game. Like everybody's having fun, everybody's being respected, you're abiding by the rules of the game. Whereas if you're playing competitively, you try to beat your opponent, and you try to make sure you and your opponent are playing a fair game, and these are directly at odds with each other. Imagine if you were driving on the road, and like everyone's trying not to hit each other, because if you hit each other, you know, bad things happen. But imagine if the other drivers on the road could get a reward if they made you crash into a tree. That would make driving a lot less safe and a lot less comfortable, probably. And that's what competitive environments for gaming are like. If another player can win the tournament by making you like crash out and leave, or making you overlook a rules interaction such that they benefit, at a much less extreme sort of level, you know, they benefit from that, and that sets you at odds with each other. And it is important that somebody is making sure that like the game you're playing is fair and the rules are being upheld and stuff. And a lot of competitive games have to have judges at tournaments who are like overlooking what's happening, or arbiters come in and settle disputes between players and stuff like that. And then a lot of the time stuff just gets missed, or like the judge isn't actually sitting and watching video footage of the game that you're playing, of like Magic against someone in a PTQ where there are still like 200 people in the tournament. The judge just isn't there, and so when they come and talk to you and your opponent, they can't actually work out that your opponent was trying to cheat. Stuff like that. It just doesn't work very well. And this has repeatedly killed competitive gaming for me. Whereas in cooperative gaming, like, y'all can just socially agree that this is the way that y'all feel happy playing the game. And also, if somebody doesn't like playing the game the way that you like playing the game, or somebody's making you uncomfortable at the gaming table, you can just be like, okay, go away. We're going to play with a different group next week. Yeah. And there's no, you know, tournament with a winner at the end or something like that for you to care about. You're just playing a game and having fun. And so there's no like integrity of the game to think about when you're getting somebody you don't like out of your gaming group. Some previous games I've played. Magic the Gathering. I played Magic the Gathering for about 4 years, super seriously, I would say, from like age 13 to 17 or something like that. I probably played a bit longer than that, really. But probably I was like most competitive in the middle and less competitive at the beginning and end. Magic the Gathering does have emergent storytelling, in my opinion. There are lots of like trip reports written about Magic the Gathering tournaments. There's lots of just relating single games of Magic where it's like, I mulliganed to 4, and then I got this thing and this thing and this thing to go my way, and I managed to win anyway, yay. And it's, you know, cool. It's fun when games create stories that you can talk about with your friends. I think that's cool. Magic the Gathering does kind of have a long campaign. It's not in an individual game of Magic, for sure. But when I was getting super into Magic, I liked to test and build decks for tournaments. I wasn't actually very interested in playing in the events because uh, I basically only played online so that I didn't have to worry about people cheating. uh, Going back to this thing, it was nice that online, you know, Magic the Gathering Online would make sure that my opponent was playing by the rules. But I was on a team, and I liked to prepare decks for them to play at tournaments and stuff like that. So, you know, it kind of had a long campaign element to it, but it wasn't like I had to go looking for it, I guess, is why this is orange and not green. Unique decisions in Magic the Gathering? Sure. Tons of unique decisions, 100%. Simple systems become complex via interactions. Very, very true. Even just within deck building with your own deck, it's very interesting to see, like, oh, this card works really well with this card because you can do this and this and this. Brainstorm is really good with a fetch land, kind of things. And then you have to add in, like, oh, also you play against other people, and there's an entire format of opposing decks that you have to metagame against and build a sideboard for and stuff. And then cooperation between players doesn't really exist a ton in Magic the Gathering, but like I said, I tried joining a team and like building decks for tournaments and stuff, and that's where I found that. And so we had a little forum online that just like 10 of us were in. We were talking about decks and what sorts of sideboard cards we were using, different matchups and stuff like that. That was cool. That was fun. I liked Magic a decent amount. Probably the biggest thing that took me away from Magic was playing at a PTQ and being like, I don't know, 7-0 or 6-1 or something. So like playing against someone who was likely to be in the top 8, and I myself was likely to be in the top 8, and they were just trying to play 2 lands every single turn, and it was getting exhausting. Every turn they would play a land in their pre-combat main and then ask me, did I play a land yet in their post-combat main? And I was like, yes. And then the third time they asked me in like game 2, I was like, I just looked at them and didn't answer. And so they played another land, and I was like, judge? The judge came, and I like explained what was happening, and the judge was like, okay, we're going to count how many lands there are. Yeah, you have 1 too many lands in play. You're going to put that back in your hand. And like didn't give my opponent a warning or a game loss or anything. And I was like, okay. And I think that was probably less than the judge should have given my opponent, because I then made the top 8 of the tournament, and this was back when Magic the Gathering had closed decks, so like there were no open deck lists. People couldn't see what deck I was playing, and I had a rogue deck, which I had spent quite a long time building and fine-tuning online. It had used Life from the Loam with cards like Call of the Herd and Barbarian Ring to be like a mid-range aggro deck in a format with like Psychotogs who were pretty good against me, but I tended to beat up on like straight aggro decks. Anyway, I had a weird deck with a weird strategy for the format, and it turned out that my opponent from that round and the judge who had been called were friends, I guess, because before the top 8, the judge was deck checking me, making sure that the 75 cards I had matched what I'd written down on my deck list. And the opponent I had was just in the judge area talking to him, looking at my 75 cards the entire time. And I was like watching this happen, and I was like, what? And then I got paired against that guy in the quarterfinals and lost, and I was so fucking pissed off. And I'm pretty sure I never played a live Magic event again. So back then there weren't a ton of online Magic events in terms of like competitive stuff. So playing online, you could only really do a certain amount of stuff, and I moved on to other things. I got really into poker for about 4 years. Poker I got into because between Magic and poker, I like went to university and got into studying things and thought I'd have a real job. And then I was studying abroad in Rome, and it was a program where like 2 grad students and a professor went over with like 15 undergrads, and the grad students and professor were running classes, and we were like walking around the city talking about archaeological sites and everything, and that was awesome. And then one of the grad students started organizing a poker night, and when I played poker, she was like, you know, I think you could probably do really well in poker. I paid for all of my undergrad by playing poker. Maybe you could check it out. And I like installed Poker Stars on my laptop and played online, and there were like 6,000 player free rolls that you could enter. It, I think, fired once per night or something at a certain time of night. And I got like top 4 in my third or something, and won, I want to say $5 of site credit, and then turned that into several $100,000. And yeah, then I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna like become a classics professor. I make more money than classics professors right now as an undergraduate studying classics. It feels like a weird career path to follow. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more than what I ended up doing, for what it's worth. I was very passionate about classics for a lot of the same reasons that I like these sorts of strategy games. Interestingly, classics has emergent storytelling where you're like trying to tell a story with a sparse archaeological and narrative record. Definitely a long campaign. You're studying thousands of years of history, looking at primary source documents which have come through thousands of years of history since then. Definitely very unique decision making and trying to like prove hypotheses and decide what different things mean. Simple systems become complex via interactions. Yes, of course. About as complicated as writing can be if you look at how writing from 3,000 years ago interacts with the present. Cooperation between players, kind of. A little bit less. I don't know. Academia would have exhausted me, I think. But anyway, I got really into poker. Poker absolutely has like the chip in the chair storytelling. Chris Moneymaker winning the World Series of Poker, No Limit Hold'em event, and stuff like that. Definitely tons of storytelling in poker. It's definitely a long campaign. I played 3.5 million hands of cash over the course of 4 years. Unique decisions, like, kind of. See, at first, this is the thing about unique decisions in games. At first, it can seem like a game has lots of unique decisions, but then if you play 3.5 million hands, suddenly, like, the decisions are starting to become pretty similar to other decisions you've made, even if they are literally slightly different, like the board ran out differently or whatever. They're not different enough that you as a human player can be like, oh, because that card is the 7 of hearts instead of the 7 of diamonds on this board, that means that my hand, which has a diamond kicker, should be a fold instead of a bluff catch call. Which is sometimes the case when you solve poker, but as a human being, you're not going to do that at the table, right? So there are kind of like, there are still unique decisions, kind of, but they're obfuscated from a human being in a way that you're not going to be able to make all of them. And then most of the stuff that you are doing comes down to like, oh, I've studied this before. You kind of do this sort of thing in this situation. And a lot of, oh, my opponent is like doing this sort of thing and this sort of thing. That probably means that their range is weighted incorrectly in this way. Yeah, but that doesn't tend to be very unique. That tends to be very statistical, and like on aggregate, players of this type are doing this sort of thing. Definitely simple systems become complex via interactions is real in poker, though. No cooperation between players in particular, unfortunately. So I got into coaching, which I found more fun. People are a lot more comfortable talking about poker strategy now than they were when I was coming up in poker. It used to be that people would actually get mad at you for explaining your reasoning for what you did in a hand in like a public place. Like other people who played professionally would be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing teaching other people how to play? We gotta stay better than them, you know? Don't be giving this stuff away. Or that was like really all I wanted to do, was talk about how to be good at the game with other people. And I didn't want to be super exclusive about it or anything. So yeah, I got into coaching, which I found to be more fun than poker, but it did make me less money. So then I was like playing poker for 6 hours and coaching for 2 hours kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Poker was eventually ended for me by the US government, who April 15th, 2011, seized the domains of the main sites that I played on and shut them down. And still to this day in Washington State, in the US, I'm just not allowed to play poker online, despite the fact that like sports gambling is advertised to children at sporting events. So I don't know what's up with that, but fuck the US government, I guess. I certainly lost a lot of my faith in the government age 24, probably, when they just like overnight terminated a career I had built for myself over the course of 4 years. Yeah. I got into XCOM Long War for a while after that. First I like puttered around in LA for a while by myself and then came back to Seattle. There was some life stuff going on there. And then I worked for my parents' business for a bit, and then I got into XCOM Long War in a big way. This is a squad-based tactics game. You're saving the Earth from aliens. You have some soldiers. The soldiers have abilities. There are different classes of soldiers who have different abilities. You're equipping them with equipment and going on missions and shooting your guns at the aliens and trying to capture them, to interrogate them, to work out what's going on. Tons of emergent storytelling in XCOM because the soldiers are generic at creation, but take on personalities of their own based on what happens, like what you decide their personality is going to be. A lot of the fun of XCOM is being like, oh, this rookie who turned into a sniper all of a sudden has 120 aim and is now killing all of the enemies in one turn, and that's just really cool, and it's been fun to see their arc over the course of a 200-hour-long campaign kind of thing. Long War also has a long campaign. It's the name Long War. It's a like fan-based mod for an XCOM game which only has like a 20-hour campaign. But Pavonis Interactive is now their name. The people who later made Pavonis Interactive decided they wanted a longer game than that, so they spent a lot of time working on it. Over the course of 4 years, XCOM Long War and XCOM 2 Long War 2, XCOM 2 Long War 2, yeah, that's his name, did start to feel like it didn't have incredible, unique decision-making possibilities and didn't have complexity via interactions between simple systems anymore. And that's because of a couple of main issues I would highlight. I think for decision making, the enemy AI, like the things the enemies will do to you based on what you do, fairly predictable, and there's a huge balance issue with like you can work out how to make them do things which are non-threatening by using certain abilities, and so you end up just using those abilities over and over and over again so that the enemies never do anything threatening to you, which isn't very interesting in the end. I'm not going to tell you what they are because if you want to play the game, like, go do it and have fun. But yeah, once you work out that the enemy just doesn't understand how to aggressively respond to certain things you can do, the game's a lot worse. And yeah, that means that the simple systems aren't really complex via interactions anymore, because what you have is a bunch of different simple systems, and then when you have them interact with each other, one of them is just way stronger than everything else. If anything, they got less complex via interacting. XCOM's single player, so there's no cooperation between players when playing the game. I did start streaming it and making strategy guides and doing like review videos of other people playing and kind of like commentary and hyping people up. So I found a little bit of cooperation between players in the community around XCOM. I should actually make this orange probably instead of red. Because the XCOM community I liked a lot for quite a while. But also mostly after like 4 years of heavy competition in poker, I was okay with just playing a single player game. I like had plenty of time interacting with other people playing the same game I was playing. The poker community had its good stuff, and it had its bad stuff. Very misogynistic. One of the issues with strategy gamers as a whole is that, okay, there's going to be like a lot of hypotheses without sufficient support in a row here, but this is like a thing that I have noticed in strategy gaming. You have people who have underdeveloped social skills who are drawn to games because the games have rules which are easy to understand. Like, it's uncomfortable to be in a social situation where the rules aren't clearly outlined for you and can be different depending on which person you're with. It's more comfortable to be in a game where the rules are the same every time and do the same thing every time you interact with them. So I'm not saying that everyone who plays strategy games has poor social skills. I'm saying that if a person has poor social skills, strategy games can be kind of like a crutch for them, for helping them like do something sociable with other people, because you're playing the game and the game is reliable and doesn't, spit out weird responses. But then if a person with poor social skills gets good at that strategy game that they're playing to make up for their poor social skills, they can start to think that the way that they're beating the strategy game is a good way to be good at social interaction as well. And that's the thing that I saw a lot in the poker community, where there was a lot of stuff like pickup artist training, where people were like, how you can use strategy for winning at a game. You can also use strategy for setting up one-night stands with women. And like, you can, that is true, but it isn't a great solution to socializing with other human beings. And I just saw like a lot of stuff like that, which I found exhausting. So I was okay with just doing my own thing for a while. It wasn't such a big deal that XCOM was single player. I also, for what it's worth, I played a lot of XCOM Long War, and I actually got invited to work on Long War 2, and so I was also like on a team working on Long War 2, and that was one of the most fun strategy gaming experiences of my life for sure. It was like 6 months of volunteering, doing QA and balance work for Long War 2, where I was just like talking with a team of a few other balance testers and the developers about how we wanted different missions to play and what I was experiencing as a gamer and stuff like that. I had a lot of fun with that. All of the things that happen when you're in a close social circle with a few people for 8 hours a day for 6 months, happened. But it was still cool. After XCOM, I played Slay the Spire. I got really excited about Slay the Spire because Magic the Gathering and poker are both card games, and XCOM was missing that card game sort of feel to it. XCOM, not a card game. Slay the Spire came out, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like a single player Magic the Gathering sort of thing with like hour-and-a-half long runs. That's like a good episode length as a streamer. And yeah, you have emergent storytelling. Slay the Spire doesn't have a long campaign typically, but I put this as green here because I started doing things like month-long challenges or win streaks or things like that, where like I was taking not just one run of Slay the Spire, but 100+ runs of Slay the Spire and grouping them together as one object I was trying to conquer. I do think Slay the Spire's capacity for unique decision making breaks down pretty heavily in the latter half of runs. I would say that like under 25% of Act 3 and 4s have genuinely interesting decision making in them for me in Slay the Spire these days. A lot of the time it's just like, oh, I have gotten these 3 or 4 cards, which I understand can combine to beat every enemy who's left, and the other cards just don't matter anymore. So you have that issue that I was talking about with XCOM, where the availability of more options actually leads to fewer options total being used, because some of the more options that are available end up being so strong that they crowd out the rest of the space. Definitely lots of simple systems becoming complex via interactions, though. Even if Act 3 and 4 can sometimes be like an hour of just playing out a strategy I already understand how to execute, Act 1 and 2 are pretty much always going to be uniquely challenging and working out how to get to that point, so that's cool. Slay the Spire does not have cooperation between players very much, and Slay the Spire was also the first big time where I put effort into building some sort of cooperation in a community, which is something that I've like patternistically done, I would say. I joined a Magic the Gathering team. I got into coaching and poker. I joined the team working on Long War 2 for XCOM. In Slay the Spire, I also did that. I like organized charity weeks. I had collaborative videos with other players and stuff like that. But over time, the Slay the Spire community went in a direction of trying to force competition onto the people in it. Like, people as streamers Some streamers weren't like good at the game and weren't worth listening to because they couldn't do this thing or that thing that another streamer could do. And that got to the point of like name calling and impugning other streamers. I don't know what impugning means. I feel like that's the right word. Harassing other streamers. Slay the Spire went from a game where I would talk on the subreddit with people every day, just like anybody, talking about, different cards or answering questions about like what's the best way to learn how to play Silent or something like that, to a place where the last like 4 times or something I've posted on the subreddit, which happens like once every 6 months maybe because of how it's gone, I've been like doxxed, insulted, told that I'm worse than other people who play Slay the Spire. It's really, yeah, really fucking wild. And this goes back to the thing where a competitive community can be ruined by like one or very few bad actors. And Slay the Spire, while it isn't a competitive game, it is a game where you can win or lose, and so if lots of people are playing it, it is possible for one person to be like, well, I win more than other people, so I'm better than them. And possible also for viewers to say stuff like that. There's a weird thing about competition here to highlight. If you have established competition in a gaming community, the people will agree on rules, the people will agree on who won, the people will vaguely agree on which events matter. They might think like, oh, the Blitz Championship is not as important as the Classical Championship, or something like that. But at least they'll agree that the Blitz and Classical Championship are both like events that the best players in the world go to. And people will also agree that competition is at least somewhat important. Like if you're in the chess community, you are going to agree that like playing against other people and trying to do well in tournaments or whatever is a thing that is, important in that community for lots of people. Even if you just play chess casually, you can still say like, yeah, I mean, if I wanted to prove I was really good at chess, I would, enter chess tournaments and win them, kind of thing, right? But if you don't have established competition in the community, which Slay the Spire, doesn't have, there's no official tournament circuit or anything like that. There's no actual way to play against other people, even. You're just playing by yourself and then comparing results. One thing that happens is that many people don't want to compete and contribute to the community without competition, and that's something that like drew me a lot to XCOM and to Slay the Spire at first. It's really cool to see lots of people being like, oh, I love this game, here's some fan art I made, here's a like video that I made, like here's some fanfic I wrote, etc. That's awesome. But what can happen, doesn't always happen, but what can happen is that other people can compete anyway, despite the fact there's no established competition. And if those people start competing, there is no competition established, so they can just say that competition is whatever they want it to be. They can say that the rules are certain things. They can disagree that different things are important. They can say like, no, a win streak isn't as good as having high win rate. Having high win rate isn't as good as a win streak. Actually, speedrunning the game is way better than playing the game slowly. I don't know. Some of these are things that like happen to Slay the Spire, and some of these things are just things that I'm saying. And people can also disagree on whether competition is important. So people can be like, well, I know that Steven's really good at the game, but sometimes he like will play a run where he's clearly just memeing and having fun, and that makes him no longer credible as a person who can talk about how to play the game. People can say stuff like that. Where other people might be like, well, it's a game and it's not competitive and he's not in a tournament, so it's like fine for him to have bought Prismatic Shard and had fun one time. That doesn't mean that he's no longer allowed to comment on Watcher strategy. I don't know. Like the thing that happened to the Slay the Spire community is one of the most like bizarre and overwhelming things that has ever happened to me in my time as a strategy gamer. So And cooperation as a streamer is also sort of interesting, getting away from that community element and just into the like thing where you are in front of an audience and you're chatting with them. So what I want when I'm talking about cooperation is I want to be on a team of players I chose to play with who are trying to work out how to beat the game together. I want to be like in a little forum being like, yo, I think maybe we should have 2 copies of Isamaru Hound of Kanda because against Magnivore, they keep on wiping the board, and it's really good to be able to play a 2-power creature the turn after a board wipe for 1 mana. And then other people can be like, oh yeah, I think, maybe you're right. Maybe even 3. I had only thought that we should have 1 because it's a legendary creature, and it can be really punishing to draw 2 of them, but, that's not that likely to happen, etc., etc., etc. What I don't want, though, is for people I don't know, who like aren't part of my team, to be telling me how to play a game without participating in any sort of decision-making process at all. So if I am like among the best players of a game in the world, it's kind of fine. You can tell me strategic stuff and I will have already considered it probably, like whatever, no big deal. But if I'm learning a new game, which is something that I like doing, I like to play new games, a lot of the things that I like are especially present when I'm playing a new game, like the narrative of the game that you play the first time can be your emerging narrative. You don't have to have one that works repetitively. The balance issues when you've worked out that certain systems collapse in a certain way toward a certain strategy don't exist if you haven't worked that out yet, etc. Yeah, if I'm not the best in the world or among the best in the world at a game, then viewers telling me shit can like ruin the experience of playing a game straight away. If somebody says like, oh, I've seen somebody else solve this problem that you're having right now, and what they did was just do this, this, and this, that kind of ruins the game for me. I'm no longer getting to like participate in working out how to win the game. I'm just being told how to win the game by somebody else. And that's a very, very, very important distinction for me in terms of like what's fun for me. So just pointing that out, especially in a video about Frosthaven, where like I've played a lot of the game, but I haven't played. I've never like gotten past the first summer of Frosthaven, pretty much, because they keep on restarting. I don't want you to like tell me all of the late game builds and stuff like that. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to like enjoy every moment of this game and stretch that enjoyment out as long as I can without you telling me, oh, the solution to this thing is that. I want to spend 100 hours trying to solve it a way that doesn't work and then find out it doesn't work. That's fun for me. That's what I enjoy doing in a game. It's also fun when it does work, for what it's worth, but, So, because of that, it's kind of hard to cooperate with people as a streamer. You kind of have to choose to either have all of the information available to humankind be fair game straight away as a new player, which is like going to completely overwhelm your chance to find out novel ideas in a system, because if you don't know everything else that other people have done, like everything's novel to you, and that's really fun. But if every piece of information that anyone else has ever found out about a thing is expected to be in your head or may be placed in your head at any time by a viewer, then you like basically never find anything novel in your first 1,000 hours of playing a game or something. You have to first get all of that in your head working, and then you can start building novel things on top of that. But 1,000 hours is a long time to go without the thing that you want. Yeah. Backseating is a weird thing there. Obviously, we don't tell someone the ending of a book they are reading. Everybody gets that. Obviously, you don't tell someone what another person thinks about a movie they're about to see unless they tell you that's okay. Everybody understands that people going to see a movie don't want you to tell them a bunch of stuff about it. Maybe not everybody. Maybe some people do that. I don't know. Whatever. Obviously, you don't tell someone the solution to a puzzle they're trying to solve. I think people get that. And yet a lot of people think that it's completely reasonable to tell someone how close they are to reaching the ending of a game they're playing and how someone else solved this part of it in order to reach the final boss, who is named Name and has 3 phases. By the way, you'll want to get a fire resist potion. Like, well, I don't know. Why do people think that that's okay to tell someone? I don't know. Anyway, it's fine. But it also isn't fine. It's fine. It's fine to like watching other people play the games and to use the strategies that you see them using to win a game on your own. That's like fine. If you enjoy that, that's cool. It's just not fine to assume that other people are getting that out of games. Other people perhaps want to work out the strategy on their own. Other people maybe want to learn the mechanics by themselves instead of having you spoil them. Stuff like that. Among Us. Sidetracked a little bit there. But yeah, this cooperation between players thing is hard to achieve in the world that I have lived in, I guess, as a streamer for the last going up on 100 months of people subscribed to the channel. Among Us, I played for about 6 months. Among Us got stale relatively quickly, unfortunately. But it was a lot of fun for a little bit. I'm just trying to get an image for you that I remembered I wanted to show. Yeah, I played a lot of Among Us. Among Us definitely has emergent storytelling, and you get to be part of that emergent storytelling. Like, you are telling the story. You're like, no, I'm not the imposter. I did this thing and this thing and this thing. That way you can clearly see that I'm on your side and I'm helping the town to win. Among Us kind of has a long campaign, but not really. I was in like a Discord where people were keeping stats of everyone over the course of like 3 months of play, and it's like, oh, look, that person's strategy as town is really cool, and then they're like adjustment, like, oh, this person's really good at killing everyone with imposter, let's be more careful around them, and stuff like that. And so that's kind of like a long campaign, but it was a bit scuffed, honestly. Like the consequences of that weren't actually very fun. You'd go into games and be like, well, we're not going to trust anything that you say because you always win as imposter. And it's like, okay, but this ruins the game. Like, you can't go into the match assuming from the start that you're suspicious of me. The point is to be like suspicious of everyone, an equalish amount, and then decide who to be the most suspicious about based on what happens in the game, etc. So, long campaign like kind of existed, but wasn't actually very good. There were tons of unique decisions in Among Us, for sure. Tons of simple systems becoming complex by interactions, for sure. And there was some cooperation between players. Like, at its best, Among Us has really cool interactions between teammates in this hidden information environment. But unfortunately, it just takes one bad egg to ruin the game. Like, one person yelling over people in meetings, or making the game personal and insulting people, or anything like that could instantly ruin a game of Among Us. The reason I eventually stopped playing Among Us was just that me and the people I was playing with got too good. And the game got worse. So it was no longer like we're solving a challenging puzzle. It was like, oh, I can just kind of tell from your tone of voice that you're the imposter this round. Like, people got way better at being town than they got at being imposter. Certainly I did. I got like okay at being imposter too, but I could like just genuinely listen to people talking and be like, oh, like, that person's the imposter. There was a game where I was playing with Hafu and 5UP, were the imposters, and Hafu got caught like in the first round, just like straight up. Like, she went for the first kill and somebody walked in on it and was like, yo, Hafu, I caught you killing somebody. And I like just kind of listened to the meeting and was like, okay, well, this one's probably over, Hafu's dead. And I like listened to who was talking in the meeting and how they were talking and who wasn't talking, and I was like, and I think the other imposter is 5UP. And I'd like never seen him do anything in the game. I'd only been in this meeting where the only thing that happened was that one person got called out, and then I was right. And I was like, well, this game isn't that fun anymore if you can just do that. So yeah, I don't know. Frosthaven. And just kind of, Frosthaven's just everything. Hot damn. So now I want to talk about Frosthaven. This is what it looks like when you play Frosthaven on the video game, which is kind of the best of a number of bad solutions for actually playing Frosthaven. Like, the game's really cool, but all of the ways to play it are just a lot of work. The video game's great. There's also Tabletop Simulator, which I have like 10 missions of up on this YouTube channel if you want to check those out. This is what my upstairs table looks like right now. So I have like mission 8. The Crystal Trench is set up, and I have 3 people coming over to play that as a 4-player party with me tomorrow night. It's all set up. I've been 3D printing models because they give you standees instead of plastic models. So I've been 3D printing and painting models. We've got some hounds and snow imps and polar bears, and we've got party members, and everyone's sitting around the table, and we have just everything ready to go. So like that's another way to play it, but I honestly need like 6 tables to have enough table space for that, and you have to organize multiple people to come over. That is the thing I'm getting in my life that is like a team working out how to play a game together. Like that's the thing for me. That's like it. I have reached paradise or whatever. So that's really cool. The video game is in early access. It's a little scuffed, like the camera's bad. There are a bunch of bugs. It's a bit laggy. But you get to play the game, and that's pretty cool. And then there's also Tabletop Simulator, which, like I said, I have maybe 10 missions up of. Tabletop Simulator is a lot of work, and it's a lot of managing everything. I played Tabletop Simulator by yourself. Frosthaven, it's kind of like XCOM. Squad-based combat. You have a few different soldiers. They have different skills depending on which class they are. You can equip them. They level up and get stronger in a few different ways. And you go on missions. But Frosthaven has just a lot more complexity than XCOM, and also a lot more attention to narrative. Kind of like meant to be a D&D campaign without a dungeon master. So the game itself plays the enemies and tells you the story while you go through it. But it does such a good job of that it's immensely replayable, which I wasn't expecting at first. When I started playing Frosthaven, I was like, I'm so sad that this is the only time I'll ever get to play Frosthaven for the first time. And then I started playing Frosthaven for the second time, and I was like, oh, it's better. What? So I've been playing Frosthaven at like absolute max difficulty, +3 difficulty. I would estimate that at +3 difficulty at my level, I win missions like 80% of the time or something. And I've been playing that if I lose a mission, I have to reset the entire campaign. There are like 160 missions in this game, and so if you do some like loose like sanity math, if I'm winning like 80% of the time there are 160 missions, I'll just never finish. And I'm kind of okay with that because every time I reset and play again, it's more fun than the previous time. Because the missions are just so cool. I called Drifter Dryfer in this screenshot I just noticed. Well, we don't need to talk about that anymore. So what's going on the screen here is my mouse cursor going to be here? Yes. We got our party up here. We've got a banner spear. The banner spear is really good at working with allies. She has a bunch of attacks where, like, if she's standing next to an ally, she can attack the 3 hexes in front of the 2 of them. Stuff like that. She also has a bunch of cards which grant allies a move, for example. And she can summon banners which have area of effect abilities, like they heal everyone or give everyone more damage on one of their attacks each turn or something like that. Banner Spear is a cool support character, pretty good at healing as well. There's the Drifter. The Drifter hits things with a big club. One of the most straightforward characters in the game, maybe the most straightforward character in the game, but also very strong. Like the numbers you get out of hitting things with a club are good enough, which feels good. I don't like it when the like straightforward characters are just worse than the more complicated characters in a game, which I feel is a very normal thing to have happen, but it just kind of feels bad. Like if somebody wants to play a straightforward character, I think they should be able to have as much output as someone who plays a complicated character. I just think that's better. There's the Blink Blade. The Blink Blade's like an assassin. It has this unique mechanic going on where it goes fast or slow each turn and has time tokens, which it stores up by going slow, which allow it to go fast. And so you have like a turn where you don't do very much and you're slow, and then a turn where you do a ton and are fast, and you can store up those turns where you're fast to have 4 of them in a row or something like that. Very cool. The reason that this mission that I'm about to tell you about was the best mission of any strategy game I've ever played is because of the Blink Blade and its unique mechanics. And then there's the Geminate. In order to play the game, these are Banner Spears cards, not Geminate's cards, but in order to play the game, you select 2 of these cards each turn, and they're your cards that you play, and then they go in your discard, usually. And then once you're out of cards in your hand, or if you have a card in discard which you need back desperately, you can rest, and you lose one of the cards in your discard and get back the other ones in your hand. And so if you have 10 cards, you can play 5 turns of 2 cards each, and then rest and have 9 cards. And then you can play 4 turns, and then you'll rest and have 8 cards, 4 turns again, rest and have 7 cards, 3 turns. It goes 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. And then you're out of cards. When you're out of cards, you exhaust. Exhausting isn't death, it's just not being able to play the mission anymore. If you do some math on that, that's 25 turns, I think. 25 turns if you have 10 cards. Cool. Geminate has 14 starting cards. So Geminate has this unique mechanic where it has 2 different forms. It's like a swarm of bugs, and it has 2 personalities, which the bugs have coalesced under. And one of the personalities likes hitting things with swords, and one of the personalities likes hitting things with ranged attacks. And you'll swap from form to form as you play different cards. And so that's really cool. But also, the fact that Geminate has 14 cards means that instead of having 25 turns of combat, you have like 47 or something. Because when you have only 10 cards, adding 1 more card just gets you 5 more turns, right? But when you have 13 cards, adding 1 more card gets you 7 more turns. Like, it starts to snowball as you get up there. Is 47 the right number? 49 maybe? Anyway, Geminate can play a lot of turns of combat, and that's kind of like Geminate's unique thing, is the cards don't tend to do that much unless you choose to use them in a way where you can never get them back again. Like, you can choose to lose cards and they'll do more than if you just discarded cards. Sometimes, some of them let you do that. But Geminate can just like fight forever. And that's pretty cool. So we're here, we're going to go kill some crabs. Technically, the mission objective is to kill the coral corpse. And we have a bunch of cards with which to do that as a party, and we have a bunch of crabs to kill. The enemies have decks with which they are taking actions against us, which is such a good way to run enemies. And how the game's set up is you're not meant to know what's in the enemy decks, and like, so they're just doing stuff every turn and you're surprised by it, basically. But it turns out that if you know what's in the enemy decks, the game's just even better. Because you can be like, well, I know that they have like these 2 moves, which are extremely dangerous for me, but they already used one of them and haven't reshuffled their deck since then. So there's actually only a 1 in 6 chance. And I can think about like this card, if I play this card, then on 4 of the 6 cards that they have left, they'll fail to deal any damage to me. So that's really good, but only 2/3 of the time. And you can like go through this like slow process of understanding. This hex is really important because it can't be attacked by 5 out of 6 of the possible enemy cards this turn, or something like that. It's a beautiful system. I really like the enemy decks a huge amount. Anyway, there's a reason that this mission is a problem. There's a tricky thing, which is that crabs tend to have a lot of shield. You can see this has 2 shield, and this is 1 shield. And so that's like flat damage reduction on all of my attacks, unless I have armor piercing. So this is like mission 5 of the campaign, and I've deliberately built armor piercing and brought all of my armor piercing cards to the mission and stuff like that as much as I possibly can. But on top of that, there's like this bigger problem. There are these lurker mind snippers. There's a squirrel outside my window just like looking at me on its hind legs. That's so weird. Left. Okay. In the next room, because Frosthaven missions are in rooms, XCOM has this pod system where there's like line of play, so you'll like walk toward the objective, and as you go there, you'll like run into a pod of enemies and you're fighting all of them, and then another pod may or may not walk into your line of sight and start fighting you as well. And because of that, in XCOM, there are like missions where you fight 1 pod at a time, and there's missions where you accidentally fight all 3 at a time because of how the pods happen to be moving around and they all happen to see you at once. And the system's okay, but it's heavy variance. And one of the reasons that Frosthaven does an incredible job of giving you missions where you're very consistently coming down to the last moment and it's really, really close is that they don't have systems which have that high variance in this game. There's variance, but a lot of the variance is fairly minute. It's like you deal 2 less damage because this happened kind of things. Not you were fighting 3 times as many enemies at the same time because this has happened. That's massive variance. That causes a mission to be a squad wipe, where otherwise you wouldn't squad wipe. And when you have variance of that intensity, and you have permadeath for characters, the consequence is that you can't balance a long campaign as aggressively. If you have the potential that a player could fight 3 times as many enemies at the same time, and the fact that if a player's soldiers die, they are gone forever, and you're hoping for the player to win a campaign which takes 100+ hours to play, most of the time things will be really easy, because most of the time they will be fighting 1/3 as many enemies. And because you have to like balance it so that most of the time their soldier doesn't die, because if their soldier does die, they don't have it ever again. Whereas in Frosthaven, you can lose cards when you take damage. So if you get crit for like 14, it's okay, you lose a card. There's a bunch of dampening mechanics to reduce variance, to make it so it's really about these like granular improvements of I'm trying to get 2 more damage this turn. I'm trying to reduce the chance that a bad thing happens by 1/6 right now. And the bad thing is just me taking 3 damage. It isn't like a soldier dying straight up. But you have to get that right over and over and over again in order to beat a mission at the difficulty that like you're playing at. And as you get better and better and better at doing that, you tweak the difficulty up. So I'm playing at +3 difficulty, which means that even though my characters are level 1 and 2, I'm fighting against enemies who are level 4. And the problem here is the Lurker Mind Snipper. So there are 3 of these. They are ranged. They attack 2 targets at the same time. They hit for 3 or 4 damage. If you look at my soldiers here, we've got like 12, 9 health. So if there are 3 of them shooting me, they will get through a whole lot of that health in 1 turn. They also have crabs with armor between me and them, and they go really fast. These are initiative values, and my Banner Spears cards have initiative values, so 15, 18, 21, 22, 25, 32. When you choose 2 cards to use in a turn, you can choose one of them to be your initiative value. So if I want to go fast, I can go at 15. If I want to go slow, I can go at 71. I could play both of these cards and either go at 15 or 71, depending on whether I wanted to move before the enemies or after the enemies. In this turn in particular, I might want to go after the enemies because I know the crabs don't tend to move 4 hexes, and they are melee enemies. So if I can move after the enemies, then they'll move toward me, and I can move in and attack them, and then next turn go fast in the initiative order, attack them again, and then maybe do something to disable them, or be tanky for the turn to block incoming attacks or something like that. But yeah, the Mind Snippers going this fast is an issue. Like 6, 10, 18. My Banner Spear has some of my lower initiative cards in the party, for sure. 15 is pretty low initiative. Still can't possibly go faster than a 6 initiative or a 10 initiative. So the Mind Snippers are just like faster than me sometimes, and they deal tons of damage. And sometimes their attacks mind control me. Control all targets of the attack ability in initiative order to make an attack for 3 against... So if my soldiers are standing next to each other, they'll start hitting each other while they're getting attacked. This like increases the damage the Mind Snippers are dealing by 50% on that card if my soldiers are standing next to each other. So I have to like try to work out how to not stand next to each other, except we're in a tight corridor. So how do you do that? And then there's even Paralyze, which stuns. So they just like time walk me. They get this 46 initiative Paralyze. They attack 2 targets each. They stun. This does require a dark element to be channeled, and I don't have anyone in my party who channels dark elements. And they have Beastie Assault, which channels dark, Consumable Hold, which channels dark, Calculated Strike, which channels dark. So if they do one of these 3, which channels dark, and then paralyze the next turn to consume the dark, then they'll stun me. But that's like fairly unlikely, and if it's 2 turns later, the dark element will already have gone away. The dark element only lasts for the rest of the round and then the round afterwards. So these are terrifying, and I've lost entire campaigns very quickly to these in the past. And enough so that I'd been thinking for quite a while about like, well, what weird things could I do to like try to solve this problem, because I keep on getting murdered by it. And I came up with a plan. So characters have their cards, right? And they use 2 cards each turn. They use the top half of one card and the bottom half of another card, because cards have 2 halves. In Blinkblade, this is a Blinkblade card, also has the fast versus slow version of the cards. So the green boxes happen if you're fast on a turn, and the yellow boxes happen if you're slow on a turn. So Blinkblade basically has 4 versions of a card. We've got the green top half, the yellow top half, the green bottom half, and the yellow top half. And then the white stuff will happen on the top half or bottom half, no matter whether you're fast or slow. An experimental adjustment is just an obscene card. This is a like broken card in a strategy game, 100%. The rules of the game mean you can't do it every turn, which is cool, because when you play it, it's in your discard pile, and then you have to like play the other cards in your hand or rest to get it back. But if you rest, you have to lose a card in your discard pile, so like you can't do that many times in a mission. But yeah, when you do get to play experimental adjustment, like pretty much whatever you're choosing, you're doing something pretty impressive. Slow top half will immobilize all enemies in 2 range and confuse them, so they're drawing 2 modifiers from their deck and using the worst one. That's really strong, especially if you're against melee enemies. You can stop them from actually standing next to you. Fast mode, bottom half, move 2, and then loot all of the loot within 1 tile of you. That's really nice for clearing up all the loot in a room before you move on, which isn't necessary. And in fact, in the course of a mission, usually it won't help you at all. But in the course of a campaign where you're playing on the highest difficulty and like missions tend to come down to the absolute wire and be a matter of like plus or minus 2 damage happening somewhere, yeah, getting all the loot so you can like build the best items for your characters and stuff like that does make a huge difference over the course of a campaign. So that is a pretty important little icon. Slow half of the card moves 4 and then immobilizes you. Now, immobilizing yourself isn't good, but Blinkblade doesn't do that much with the slow versions of cards usually, and so being able to move 4 is cool. And if you are going to immobilize yourself, like maybe that's the turn before you rest or something, and so the next turn you just rest. You're immobilized for 1 turn, but you're resting anyway, it doesn't really matter. Definitely situations where you can use that. But I've almost never used any of those modes of the card a single time because the fast top version makes you go invisible, and then they just can't hit you. It's like Apparition in the Slay the Spire. It's broken, but it's broken in a way that's so fun and lets you do such unique things. When you go invisible, you cannot be targeted by attacks. Enemies can move through the hex that you're in, but can't stop on the hex that you're in. And so sometimes you'll be like, well, if I was invisible on that particular hex, I'd be in the middle of like 6 enemies, but I'd also be in the way. And so a bunch of ranged units who wanted to move forward to shoot at me wouldn't be able to stand on the hex that they're able to shoot from, and then they'd like traffic jam. And that would be really good for me. So yeah, let's go invisible on that exact hex, and that like reduces incoming damage by 50% that turn or something like that. That's pretty cool. You can also do even weirder stuff, which was my plan. The plan was to play experimental adjustment to go invisible, and then the next turn go very slow. So go after all of the enemies had gone. And then the next turn, I would have Stamina Potion. This is one of the items you can equip yourself with. The game also has a town phase, which I'm not going to talk about almost at all here, but it's really cool and rich, and you build buildings and equip your characters with different things and choose which mission to go on next, and navigate events that happen in town, and there's an entire narrative. Like, I don't have the books here, but it's like this many pages of books or something. Frosthaven. So one of the things in town is there's an alchemist where you can brew potions out of certain resources, and Stamina Potion is made by certain resources at the alchemist, but the game doesn't even tell you which potions you get. You have to like find the resources and then try them at the alchemist, and then you like find out what you got. It's so cool. So I've intentionally covered the resource requirement for Stamina Potions so that if you're watching when I play the game, you won't find out. I should have said like a long time ago, this is like a very early mission in the game. All the characters are starting characters. I'm not like spoiling much. If you're worried about spoiling the game and thinking like, oh, I shouldn't watch right now, like, it's fine. This is like one of the earliest missions, very beginning of one of the quest lines. We have like the starter characters at level 1 or 2. You can be the judge of how much spoiling is spoiling for you, but I'm not spoiling much at all here. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're going to use Stamina Potion, and then we're going to have Experimental Adjustment again, and then after that I can rest and get it again. And so the idea is that I'm just going to be invisible over and over and over again. Turn 1, my Banner Spear can help my other characters move, so my Banner Spear is going to move the Blinkblade toward the next door where all the Mind Snippers are. then the blink blade's going to move, and then the blink blade's going to go invisible so that it can't get attacked because it's now surrounded by enemies, right? Then on turn 2, the blink blade's going to go slower than all the other enemies because invisibility lasts until the end of our next turn, like the next time that we move. So if we go invisible at initiative 12, we'll be invisible before the enemies all move, hopefully. And then if we don't move the next turn until initiative like 80, we'll be invisible all the way from 12 to 99 on that round, and then all the way from 1 to 80 on the next round, which should be invisible for 2 entire turns for all of the enemies. That's the idea. So go really slow. We will heal, and then we'll use our potion to get experimental adjustment back, and then on turn 3, we're going to open the door to the next room, uncovering a bunch more enemies, including the lurker mind snippers, but the mind snippers are so far away from the rest of our party, and the blink blade's invisible, so what are they even going to do? They don't have that much HP. The problem is that there's like heavily shielded crabs between us and them, so it's really hard to get them to kill them. But the blink blade's invisible and right next to them, so the blink blade's just going to kill them all. How cool is that? I'm going to run next to them, go invisible. When I go invisible, I deal AoE damage to everything within 2 range. That's already 1 damage to the mind snippers, potentially. And then on turn 4, I'll just go slow. I'll go after the mind snippers have gone, and I'll just have all my damage cards. I'll just deal as much damage as I possibly can on turn 4. Boom, boom, boom. Maybe one of them's dead already. There's only 2 left. There's 3 total. Boom. Already, we have one of them dead in my head. This is what I'm thinking. Turn 5, we get experimental adjustment back again by short resting, which loses a random card in our discard pile, but we can re-roll it by paying 1 health. And if we re-roll it, we get to choose a different one that isn't the one that we'd lost. So we randomly lose 1 card. If it's experimental adjustment, we re-roll. No problem. We lose 1 health, whatever. But we are guaranteed to get experimental adjustment back. So we go invisible again. At initiative 12, 10, no, 10, because we took a card. We also took a card that has initiative value 10, right? Because the mind snippers can go at 10 with hasty assault. So the only issue is psychic shock, but psychic shock doesn't actually attack. It just has retaliate. So they'd be really good at attacking us if we attacked them because they retaliate. But it's okay. It's okay. They can attack us faster than 10, and if we go at 10 and they go at 10, we win the tiebreak. We go first. Cool. So we're going to get the stuff back. We're going to go invisible at initiative 10, right next to the mind snippers. We only need the top half of the card to go invisible, so we can use the bottom half of the card to deal damage. So we'll also deal some damage with the bottom half of our card. Great. And then on turn 6, we're invisible. We go slow. The mind snippers like mill around. They can't do that much, hopefully. And then we hit them as much as possible. And then turn 7, I didn't really have a plan for turn 7. And I also didn't have a plan for some other things. Anyway. Here's Blinkblade. Blinkblade has run past all of the enemies in the first room. Shoom! Here we go. And Blinkblade the next turn, or 2 turns later actually, has opened the door to the room after that. So we have the rest of the party doing kind of normal things. And we have some like very basic squad-based combat going on here. We're in a hallway. We want to find a choke point. So if we stand here, here, and here, we have 3 hexes next to each other, whereas there are only 2 hexes that the enemies can actually stand on to attack us. So since we're all melee combatants in this room for the most part, if we get 3 hexes next to each other and they get 2 hexes next to each other, we have like leverage of force against them. We're getting 3 attacking models, whereas they're only getting 2. So we're trying to do that, but at the same time, there's weird stuff going on. Like we killed this one, and then Banner Spear didn't have an attack to make. So last turn, Banner Spear moved up to attack here so that she could be useful, and then this turn, we're going to try to move back again before they move in because we don't want them to get 3 versus 3. That's like not as mathematically favorable for us, etc. We're doing all the grindy, like small micro optimizations that happen in squad-based combat, which are great and awesome and a good time over here. That's really fun. The different characters are all really flavorful. The Geminate has the ranged form and the melee form, and right now we're in the ranged form, which is kind of weird. That's not really what we want to be in when we're in melee combat with an enemy, but it's okay because the ranged form can just like shoot at something else. Geminate, for what's worth, also very bad at armor piercing. Not a great character, perhaps, to bring on a mission where this many enemies have 2 shields. Banner Spear and Drifter, somewhat better at it, so, you know, we did okay. But then also we have this thing where Blinkblade is walking into a room with 6 enemies completely by itself. The amount that this just like flies in the face of everything I ever learned was sensible to do in like a game like XCOM, for example, is just incredible. There's just like, the first time I played XCOM 2 Long War 2, I played a mission where you had to like hack a relay, and it was actually correct to hack the relay instead of killing all of the enemies and then hacking the relay, which hadn't happened in XCOM 2 without the Long War mod. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my god, there's a different way to play a squad-based game other than formulaically killing every enemy while trying to minimize how many of them were active on the map at a time. That's so cool. And this is the first time since then, really, that I've had that similar sort of excitement where it's like, oh my god, I'm just activating every enemy on the map, and it seems like it's actually a good idea right now. Was it a good idea? Well, anyway, the enemies used hasty assault. So the lurker mine sniffers have one card, which moves them 2 more than their default movement. Their default movement is 3 for a regular one or 4 for an elite one, and they used hasty assault, so they're moving 5 and 6. And they can't see my blink blade, but they do try to get to a hex from which they can attack someone they can see, and so they're just running out of the room. I'm just running past my blink blade. And at this point, I'm sitting there like, my plan was to kill these with blink blade so that they wouldn't be able to attack the rest of my party. But what do I do if they just like run past me, and now the rest of my party is 3 models instead of 4, and it's fighting 3 mine snippers who, instead of having 3 crabs with armor protecting them, have 9. Is that good? It doesn't seem very good. And then I believe, so the enemy decks, some of their cards have these reshuffle modifiers on them. I believe they went for turn the weak on the next round, which is another move for 3 or 4, and then they did, I think, hasty assault again, or maybe just a different move, I don't know. But 2 rounds later, they were just completely passed by blink blade, 100%. There was just an absolute traffic jam of crabs in the first room. The rest of the party is like performing somewhat admirably against the first like 4 crabs that we had to fight. We're trying our best. The Claw Crushers have this move where they get even more shield for the turn, so we won't be killing them this turn. But we're at like 4 health, 3 health. Drifter's doing well. Drifter tends to do pretty well. Like I said, Drifter's a very straightforward character, but just has like good numbers, so it works out. But what is going to happen when these arrive? And these aren't all melee, so I can no longer be like in these 3 hexes, reducing how much damage is incoming, because now there are going to be a bunch of ranged crabs out here just absolutely shredding me. Like, if I didn't do anything here, I'm probably 2 turns from just straight up dead. Just campaign over. And this is a game where, like I said, like, swings and variants are fairly granular. I haven't even like found the Carl corpse yet. So the fact that my party is that close to being dead right now, like that far away from winning the mission, is pretty remarkable and abnormal. The way that you get wiped really fast in this game is when you play escape missions where every single model has to survive, and like 6 enemies surround 1 model because you mispositioned or something like that. So it does sometimes happen that you get completely wiped, but it's very abnormal, I would say, and only happens if like you make a mistake or take a risk, I want to say. Let's talk about sacrifice. So I feel like in squad-based tactics games, one of the coolest things that can happen is when you sacrifice a soldier to solve the problems for the rest of your team. And in XCOM, which is the main squad-based tactics game I've played, that just doesn't happen that much because it's usually not worth it to do it. Usually if you play a mission and one of your soldiers die and you win the mission otherwise perfectly, it's bad overall. And so this isn't like a strategy you can really rely on, except in very strange corner cases. And sometimes you might have to do it. But another thing about XCOM is that a soldier on 1 hit point has the same offensive output as a soldier on full hit points. So you don't, like, usually it's better to try to spread the damage around on all of your soldiers and have them all surviving at like 3 HP so that you can deal a bunch of damage to the enemies and kill them all, right? Cool. But Frosthaven's not quite like that, because Frosthaven's card system is the best fatigue system I've ever seen in a squad-based game. And interacting with it and playing with it is just more fun than any other fatigue system I've ever played with. Most fatigue systems feel very punishing. There's like green fog in XCOM, where every turn that you take in a mission, your soldiers' stats get a little bit worse. It just feels punishing. There's red fog in XCOM, where if you've taken damage, your stats are reduced. You can't move as far, stuff like that. Again, it just kind of feels punishing. What Frosthaven has instead is, the longer it's been since you've rested, the fewer cards you have in hand, which means the fewer things you can do with your turn. And you can still do the full output of the thing you choose, but you just don't have as many things to choose. If it was important to you to go at initiative 15, all of your initiative 15 or lower cards may be in your discard pile already, so you can't. If it was important to you to make a ranged attack, all of your ranged attack cards may be in your discard pile again, so you can't. Games like XCOM have tried to do this with things like cooldowns, but they don't have the rest mechanic. And the rest mechanic lets you say, like, okay, I could play one of the 3 cards that are left in my hand here as my second card, but none of them really work for me this turn, so I'm just going to rest. I'm going to get the rest of my cards back. I'm going to lose a card. It costs me overall. My character could have gotten 25 rounds of combat potentially, but since I'm basically skipping 2 by resting now my maximum possible rounds played in the fight is 23. But the mission will only take like 17 or 18 rounds, so that's okay. That's an okay sacrifice that I'm willing to make. I need to get my cards back. There's a constant changing decision-making process about when to rest going on. That's really cool. It's really cool that you're trying to make it so your worst card is good on turn 4 or 5 or something like that, because, you know, you've already used your best cards and you don't want to have to rest yet. You want to get value out of all of the cards in your hand before you rest and pick them back up again. When you take damage, you can lose health or you can use a card to fully block all the damage, but you can't lose 1 card from your discard pile. You have to lose a card from your hand or 2 cards from your discard pile. So sometimes you'd be like, well, I could play these 2 cards, but then I have no cards left in hand, so if I get crit, I have to lose 2 cards from a discard pile. That doesn't seem very good. Maybe I should rest. There are just tons and tons and tons of different implications of this resting system with the cards and the enemies. And then on top of that, there are the implications of just the cards in general without even thinking about resting. So, yeah, that's all going on. But also, consider, like, suppose I have a 1 HP character and another 1 HP character, and one of them has 10 cards left and one of them has 6 cards left. My intuition, as a strategy gamer who has played lots of strategy games, not talking about like being in real combat or something, but like based on other strategy games that I've played, I would think, well, since the soldier on 10 cards left like kind of has more resources, I should take damage on them. And they'll have to lose a card to block the damage, but, you know, they'll still have 9 cards left, and my other soldier will have 6 cards left, and I think that's better than having 10 cards and 5 cards. That's not actually how the card system works. Well, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. In the card system, if you have 10 cards, you can play 5 cards, then rest, then you'll have 9 cards. And you can play 4 cards, 4 turns, and rest, then you'll have 8 cards. 4 turns and rest, 7 cards. 3 turns, 3 turns, 2 turns, 2 turns, 1 turn, 1 turn, and then you have no cards left. You can't play any cards. That means you exhaust. Done for the mission. Not dead for the campaign, just done for the mission. Lore-wise, the way I imagine exhausting works is like the soldier just can't fight anymore, is either like unconscious on the ground or maybe like crawls back to the start of the mission and waits for the party to come get them. Something like that is going on. They're not dead. So if you have only 6 cards left though, you can only play 12 turns of combat. So going from 6 cards to 10 cards increases the number of cards you have by 67%, but increases the number of turns you can play by over 100%. It more than doubles them. So actually, instead of trying to even the resources on your characters, what can make sense is to sacrifice 1 character, have them take all the damage, have them lose all the cards to block the incoming enemy attacks, and then end up with 3 characters who are all healthy and like intact and able to do a wide variety of maneuvers. you know, they have lots of different cards left. Instead of having 4 characters, of which like 2 of them are heavily hamstrung and limited on what they can do left in the scenario, and maybe don't have many rounds left to play either. That kind of thing. So sometimes you'll get in a mission situation and you'll be like, this seems like a really good spot to sacrifice my weakest character, keep the 3 characters who are healthy so that I can take on the final room with 3 good characters left. Instead of having a situation where it's like, I desperately need to make sure all of my characters are alive, etc., etc., etc. It's a better system. It's just better. Flip side, sometimes you'll have a mission where it's like, there are 6 rounds left. This is a timer mission or something like that. And in a mission like that, you're desperately trying to keep the character who has fewer cards alive for the full 6 turns, both so that you don't fail the mission, perhaps, because if they die, maybe the mission fails, or exhaust, rather, maybe the mission fails, but also because you want their output on the team. Like, you want 6 rounds from them and 6 rounds from everybody else, and it's not worth it to have slightly better 6 rounds on the rest of the characters and have no rounds on them. So, depending on the situation, you have to decide who's tanking for you. The game's so good. The game's so good. Anyway, Banner Sphere has this card. It has 3 range. Incendiary Throw. It deals 1 damage at 3 range. If the target suffers damage from this attack, the target and all enemies adjacent to it get wounded. Wound is a negative effect. It has the affected character suffer 1 damage at the start of each of its turns. A heal ability will cure the wound. The crabs can't heal. None of the enemies on this mission have healing. All the crabs are standing next to each other. I mean, not all the crabs. But if I hit this with Incendiary Throw and successfully deal damage, and this is one of the Mind Snippers. The Mind Snippers don't have shield. I will apply wound to 6 enemies. It's probably, like, most of my cards deal like 3 to 6 damage, whereas this is probably like 30 damage or something like that. We are pretty clearly going to get absolutely shreked. Like, we're about to take tons and tons and tons of damage. It's not reasonable for me to try to tank this damage with my 3 characters. It's just not happening. This is a summon, by the way. We call this guy Charles Reinforcement. Banner Spear can summon him. He has 1 health and can't attack. He gets summoned in front of a demon and then gets hit for 20 and dies, and then we summon him again later. He doesn't have a great life. Anyway, cool. Yeah, whatever. If we can wound here, that's great. But what if the target doesn't suffer damage? Well, this is a part where, this is a moment where this granular variance is actually fairly large. This is one of the larger variance rolls that I've seen in the game. Let's talk about the modifier deck and sing its praises for a second. The game doesn't use die rolls to see if an attack hits. XCOM does, D&D does, Frosthaven doesn't. Frosthaven uses modifier cards. Frosthaven says, yes, the attack hits. But we have modifier cards to say how hard it hits, how well it hits. They're drawn from unique character decks to increase or decrease the damage dealt and or apply other effects to the characters involved in the attack. Now, there is a crit miss, so it is possible for you to draw this attack misses, but you can only draw the crit miss once per turn, pretty much, unless certain corner cases happen. So if you're attacking like 3 times with the same character, you're guaranteed to have 2 attacks hit in that turn. And also, if you attack with advantage, you get to draw 2 modifiers and choose the better of the 2. So in that situation, like, even if you draw the crit miss, you'll have a different modifier you can use instead. Cool. This is just a much better way to do it than rolling dice. And I've talked before in this presentation about how I like decks more than die rolls in general, or randomness, because they're constantly changing things. Like, you can look at your modifier deck and think like, oh, I like only have -1 modifiers left in my deck pretty much, so I can't expect my attack this turn to do very much damage, and adjust appropriately. Whereas you might look at your modifier deck and be like, wow, my like +3 card that I got when I leveled up is still in my deck, even though there's only 5 cards left. So, you know, you can think about how things change based on that. Yes, I have obviously spent 20+ hours doing simulations on this stuff. I am a nerd. So, I mean, yes, when leveling up, you're choosing like different perks, and the perks often change your modifier deck. And yes, I did like set numeric values for different status effects that perks could give the different characters, and then simulated all of the different combinations of like perk stuff for the characters, and now I have 8 different spreadsheets with 17 different tabs on them. And let's see. This tab looks like it has 600 rows, 656 rows. That's not the largest tab, but yeah, like I'm a nerd. I like this. That's more fun to me than dice. Cool. Anyway, we hit. I drew a -1 modifier on an attack for 1, but because I knew that this was a really big moment, I had my Drifter go before my Banner Spear in the turn, something you can do because you can change the initiative of your characters with the different cards you use, right? So I used a slightly lower initiative value with the Drifter and a slightly higher initiative value with the Banner Spear. So the Drifter would go first. The Drifter walked up, poisoned the enemy. Poison means that the enemy will take 1 more damage, 1 more base damage from incoming attacks, which means that the -1 modifier still deals damage, and all of a sudden I have 6 wounds applied. Cool. So now all of the crabs are dead in 13 turns. But we'll also be dead in 13 turns if they keep on attacking us. So now we have to kill the most dangerous ones and kite the other enemies. And that's the plan now. Moment of love for Sand in the Hourglass. A lot of the cards have very unique, interesting ways they can be used. They all also have basic effects. So Sand in the Hourglass here has all this text, lots of text, but also has like attack for 2, attach to the top half, or move for 2, attach for the bottom half. So if I don't want to do something like very unique and corner casey, I can just hit something with my dagger for 2 with the card. Another thing which dampens variance, right? You can always have an action that's like at least okay on your turn, no matter which cards you have left. Cool. But this time, Sand in the Hourglass is pretty good here. Sand in the Hourglass, all enemies with wounds suffer 2 damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that one does too. 7. This one's only at 1 health. So this is a 13 damage Sand in the Hourglass, which is really cool. And that's just like one throwaway card, basically. It's not like Blinkblade has this entire like character built around making wounds good or anything. It's not like I'm building a wound deck. I have a situation in a game which, via emergent interactions between the mechanics, I've accidentally made a giant clump of enemies, which led to me sacrificing an entire character to wound a ton of them. And now suddenly Sand in the Hourglass, which is often just like an okay card, is kind of useful to be able to deal damage to something from a long way away with your assassin, who doesn't have great ranged attacks, so sometimes you'll use it for that. All of a sudden, Sand in the Hourglass is like one of the highest output cards I've ever seen in the game. That's so cool. That's so cool. Blinkblade is not on the screen here, but is dealing 13 damage, yeah? And this is a situation where the card's so good that I think I like rested afterwards and played it again. Like, even though I had other cards in my hand, I was like, okay, sure, I could play other cards, but I could also just rest and play Sand in the Hourglass, and that seems worth losing the other card in my discard pile straight away. Let's do that. I've talked a bit about how exhaustion doesn't kill your character. Yeah, I mean, I left Banner Spear there to tank as much as possible to try to keep Drifter and Geminate healthy. Blinkblade, meanwhile, has run off into the room and is like being ignored by the enemies, so that's cool. But they're all still coming. They've hit Banner Spear a ton. Geminate and Drifter are trying to run backwards. The crabs don't move every turn, so we're hoping that they like do their attacks which don't involve movement and things like that. We've, I think at this point, killed all of the Mind Snippers. So Banner Spear stood in the middle of them, took a ton of hits, lost cards, survived as long as possible, threw a spear at a crab and hit it probably, and then exhausted. I really like that you can do this. There are people who house roll to make exhaustion more punishing. Like they'll house roll that if a character is exhausted, you have to retire them and make a new Banner Spear at level 1. Or they'll house roll even that if a Banner Spear exhausts at all, you have to retire the Banner Spear and you're never allowed to make a Banner Spear again. I think there are 17 different hero classes in the game, so you can definitely lose some characters and still keep fielding a party if you're playing that way. But I just think this is a really good mechanic. I just think that this is a better mechanic than other games have for soldiers running out of health. I think it's bad for your characters to die when they run out of health, because you want your characters to be able to die over the course of a squad-based tactics mission. The best game prior to this that I'd played for this kind of thing was Blood Bowl. And in Blood Bowl, it's like simulating American football, and you have characters fighting each other on teams, and you can knock out the other team's character. So the other team's character is like, there's another thing that's even worse than knockout. But basically, you're like removing the other team's characters from the field for the rest of this drive, but then they might come back again, or they might be removed for the entire rest of the game, but then in the next game, they're still alive and back. And a character actually being killed entirely can happen, but it's very unlikely. And I remember thinking that that was a really elegant way to solve this. That's another way that I like it being done. I think like games like Necromunda do that as well, I believe. But yeah, I like this one a lot. It's just like, it is free for Banner Spear to be exhausted here, other than the fact that it makes the rest of the mission much harder. Like, it's not like I want Banner Spear to be exhausted. I'd rather Banner Spear be up and fighting for 10 more turns, but it's not happening. Also, by the way, note that this crab with 18 armor is not wounded and hasn't taken damage yet. That'll come up later, because there's a lot more in this mission still. So, Blinkblade, not that good at dealing damage to things with shield, other than with Sand in the Hourglass on wounded ones, and honestly, like, the wounded ones are mostly dead at this point. These two both have 1 health left, so they'll be dying before they move again. I've got like 1 at 6, which is wounded, and then 1 at 12 now, and 1 at 8, who are not wounded. But yeah, the actual goal of the mission is to kill the Coral Corpse, who I didn't even get to yet. One of my characters is already dead. The Drifter and Geminate are on 3 health and still standing on the starting hexes. I shouldn't say still. They left the starting hexes at some point and have now returned to them. And Blinkblade's just kind of over here. All of the crabs have left this room. The boss is over here. Let's go fight the boss. Why not? This is one of the reasons that I actually think, like, replaying the game, it gets better. The first time you play a mission, you're not meant to know everything that's in the mission and everything. Like, as you open the door for the first time, you're not meant to know what's there. Once you know what's in the room, you can actually make, like, interesting decisions based on the knowledge that you have, instead of playing the game and just, like, finding out what happens, which I like a lot more. Now, different people like different things, sure, whatever, but I like this. I know that the Coral Corpse is in there, and I happen to know that Blinkblade can do pretty well against the Coral Corpse 1v1. Even though it's like the boss of the mission, and you might think it needs multiple characters to bring it down. Blinkblade's also incredibly healthy, hasn't been attacked by almost any enemies for the entire mission. So, yeah, let's go for it. The environment. Planet's heating up. But also, in the game, you can use the environment to fight the enemies. And there happen to be traps set in front of the boss room. And so my thought was, my Blinkblade has winged shoes, because you can equip your characters, and the equipment does a variety of stuff. Sometimes it, like, quite meaningfully changes turns in really creative ways. Winged shoes let you jump, which means you can get over traps without springing them. This icon here means that you can use it once every time you long rest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the boss room with winged shoes. After appearing in the boss room, I'm going to long rest, just right in front of the boss. I'm going to be like, hi, and then go to sleep for a turn. I don't know, I'm tired. Are you going to sleep when you long rest? I don't know. I'm going to get my wing shoes back, and then I'm going to leave. And then the boss is going to be active in the room with traps between it and all of my party, which will make the boss walk over the traps, trapping itself to death! Except not actually, because it has 68 health and the traps deal 6 damage. So not quite to death. To less than 68 health, but it's a lot of health. It is a lot of health. The boss also has Retaliate, and the Blinkblade is almost exclusively a melee character and is an assassin, so like our max health is 8. Maybe 9 on this mission, actually. So yeah, we're going to have to play the boss fight in a very specific way for Blinkblade to do well. Also, by the way, can we shout out Geminate and Drifter, who are standing, every time an enemy dies, they drop a loot bag. They are standing in, I mean, they're standing 3 hexes from the start of the mission, in a like Scrooge McDuck vault of gold, basically, right now. There's one crab here. There's also a crab who followed Blinkblade, who's like down here. It turns into 3 1v1s eventually. But yeah, the plan with Blinkblade, who is over here, very healthy, doing great. Not sure what the problem is with everyone else who had to fight 12 crabs at the same time. Blinkblade's just going to let the boss walk up to it and then push the boss back using a card kinetic maneuver. We have one card which can push the enemy. We're going to use it repeatedly here. We're going to just push the boss over the traps over and over again. Each trap deals 6 damage, and there are 5 of them. So that's 30 damage. 30 damage out of the 68 already worked out. We've also successfully wounded the boss, so it will take 1 damage per turn. It's like kind of close to dead. We're missing, I don't know, 20 points of damage or something still. I've never played another game where this could actually happen. We're in a situation here where a mission which started as like a corridor, just pitched fight, like every time ever that I've played a mission where it's just like a corridor and you're fighting in it, you kill every enemy in the corridor and then you go to the next room. We are in this mission and I have 3 distinct 1v1s spanning from the hex outside where I spawned to the final hex of the mission where the boss is. And they're ongoing at the same time. This is so cool. This is so cool. And yeah, as this moves on, our Drifter kills a crab successfully and comes to help. Blinkblade has been pushing the boss over as many traps as possible and just like resting a lot to get kinetic transfer back so we can push again. The boss is starting to run out of health. The Blinkblade and Drifter are like running out of cards, but still have plenty of cards left. And now like they're here to help each other. No big deal. The Frozen Fist is not a very challenging boss. It just has a lot of health, basically. Geminate is still trying to fight something that has 2 shield. And this is a particularly funny turn because it used the thing, which gives it another 2 shield this turn again. So Geminate's just kind of there, just kind of trying. Yeah. And push the boss over another trap, and then we go get a chest, because there are chests in the game. The enemies drop loot, so that's really cool, because you need the loot to build structures in town and build items for your heroes and stuff like that. There are also chests, and the chests have different things on them depending on which mission you're playing. So like the first time you're playing the mission, it's like a loot box, basically. You don't know what you're going to get. That's exciting. But then like after you know what's in the chest, if you play the mission again, it's like a variable strategic decision. You can be like, well, that chest is there, but I don't think I need the reward from it that much, so it doesn't seem that important to go get it. Some of the chests are like, they're often very deliberately just slightly out of your way. It's kind of like Strawberries in Celeste, if you played Celeste, where like you can see the chest on the screen with you, but you clearly have to do something a little bit more complicated than what you would usually do in order to get it. And in a game where the game is well balanced and missions tend to be pretty close, deciding whether or not to take a short detour to do something, which might take you 1 extra round or something like that, is a really big deal, which can actually cost you an entire mission sometimes. So those decisions feel like they're a big deal. They feel fun to make. Shout out to the Geminate for killing 1 crab, which eventually happened. I also want to say, like I mentioned at the start, Geminate's big thing is that we have 14 cards. So Geminate still has 10 rounds of combat left here. The boss is wounded. So right now, if the rest of my characters just like crit missed all the rest of their attacks and died, Geminate could just like stand there until the boss died of its wound, which is pretty funny. Geminate also poisoned and wounded, but we can like heal ourselves to get rid of that. That's fine. Anyway, Geminate did great, and we won the mission. When you win the mission in the video game, it gives you a little like look at your party. So this was my party. It gives them little like rewards based on what they did. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on to further modify the combat. So each mission has like at least 1 unique thing going on with it. There are very few missions which are just pitched combat. It's like always, oh, there's a particular mini boss in the mission, or this is an escape mission, or this is timed, or you're in an elevator and all the security systems are waking up, Or there are laser beams and they keep on rotating and you're kind of like doing a jewel theft almost because you're trying to avoid the laser beams and trying to push the enemies into the laser beams. And if you get hit by the laser beams, it does kind of hurt, but it doesn't instantly kill you. You can have that happen once or twice. It's really cool. Every mission you're thinking about a slightly new rules environment because each mission has unique rules to it. Why is the sun outside? Like I like the sun well enough, but the older I get, the more I kind of like see the point of view of the supervillains who wanted to destroy it in the cartoons I watched growing up. Or maybe they wanted to destroy the moon. I don't know. Whatever it was. Anyway, so you have battle goals and these are drawn. You draw 3 of them from a deck of like 60 something, I think, or maybe 80, I don't know. And then choose one each mission. So each mission you'll have a different battle goal, and the chances that you're playing a mission with the same battle goal that you've played it with before are fairly low unless you've played a very, very, very large amount of the game. So you always have a little bit of extra stuff to be thinking about. Some of these things are like never use your lowest initiative card when choosing your initiative for the turn. Some of them are like kill 2 enemies in the same turn. Some of them are kill an enemy and open a door in the same turn. And so instead of like getting set up perfectly for the door before you go into the next room, you're playing it a little bit off the cuff. And then you have masteries as well. I've finished 3 masteries in this party total. Each character class has 2 masteries, which are always the same, and they're kind of connected to the character's main mechanics. So, for example, Guardian of the Flag for Banner Spear is summon a banner and stay within 3 range of it for the entire mission and keep it alive the entire time. And yeah, it's kind of fun. So sometimes you'll be looking at a mission and think like, this mission looks like it's probably pretty winnable. Maybe I could try to get one of my mastery goals complete, but it would require me, again, like going 1 round out of my way. If you go 1 round out of your way in a game where missions are often decided by 1 round, that can be a pretty big deal. And also, if you're consistently winning missions by like 3 rounds in a game like this, you can choose like, oh no, I'm going to go out of my way to get the masteries done this time. And then all of a sudden the mission's close again. So that's really cool. And then we also have personal quests. We're trying to loot lumber cards, which will unlock Sacred Soil, which is a mission chain. We're trying to get 100 gold. We're trying to complete, yeah, cool stuff. There are a bunch of things going on in characters. I just talked about combat goals, masteries, and personal quests. We can also equip them in different ways. And as you go through the game, you unlock more equipment. So yeah, you can develop their modifier deck by adding new cards to it and choosing which cards to add. And a lot of the cards, they're not like this card is strictly better than another card. They're very much different things. Like one card will give you shield sometimes when you make an attack. One card will heal an ally sometimes when you make an attack. One card will crit the enemy but give you brittle when you make the attack. So you have to like think about, in this particular party, for the missions I'm likely to play, which of these is a bigger deal. And then also, because when you finish a personal quest, you retire. Sometimes you'll be building a character and it's like, well, this personal quest will take a long time, so I should be kind of going for like a level 5, level 6-ish power spike kind of build. Whereas other times you'll be like, well, this personal quest is going to take like 4 missions. I'm just going to take the thing that makes me as strong as possible at level 2. And so you have very real reasons to build characters very different ways because of the retirement quests that are going on. You can choose different cards for each mission. You have a pool of your hand size plus 3 cards to choose from each mission at level 1. So like if your hand size for a mission is 10, you have 13 cards total that you can choose between. And then every time you level up, you add 1 more card to your pool. You draw 2 cards. Sorry, you don't draw 2 cards. You're offered 2 new cards per level up, and you choose one of them to add to your pool. And you can go back to choose a different one. So at level 2, you'll get offered 2 new cards, choose one of them. At level 3, you'll get offered 2 new cards, plus the card that you didn't take from level 1, and you can choose one of those 3. Level 4, you'll get offered 2 more, so there'll be 4 total being showed to you now, and you can choose one of those. Typically, I think, the higher level you are, the better the cards that you're being shown get. Typically, but not always. And yeah, that's really cool. Is experience even good? I don't know, because you can like play, when you play certain cards, you get experience for them, but is that good? Because when you level up, the monsters level up too. Is that a thing you want? Or do you want to like get equipment and perks and stuff as quickly as possible while actually keeping your level low so the monsters stay low? I don't know. I've played hundreds of the games. I still don't know. This game's so good. So, I really like Frosthaven. I just wanted to tell you about it. I wanted to tell you about this mission because this mission was just so cool. I've just never in my entire life, I don't think, played a squad-based game where this is going on. It's like 3 1v1s, each of them between a completely unique hero on my side and a completely different enemy on the other side, ranging from the first hex of the mission to the last hex of the mission at the same time. What? I've like almost never, I feel like, played a squad-based tactics game where this has happened, where it's like being sensible to sacrifice a character to set up a giant wound field. So good. So, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed. I want to talk about the stuff at the beginning instead of just Frosthaven because it feels like placing this in the context of my entire life as a gamer is appropriate because of where it sits in my entire life as a gamer, which is like up here. That's why I wanted to talk about all of that and to help you like situate in how I'm feeling about things. Like this was just, yeah. So, you can catch my stream and find me playing Frosthaven all the time. I will probably get some of it uploaded to YouTube at some point. There's a Tabletop Simulator campaign from quite a while ago, which is up. It's not like fully complete or anything. Basically I played through until the first characters were retiring, and then I got overwhelmed because I got 4 new characters and didn't know how to play any of them, and that was just a lot for me. So there's that if you want to watch that, but be warned that it does end. But I don't think this is a game where you should be thinking about it as like a one-time RPG. I think this is a game you should think about more as XCOM-like, where it's like, oh, you can play this over and over again. The missions are really cool. It's really cool to level up your characters every time and to do so over and over again, to try different things as you do so. And depending on what happens in each campaign, missions are going to look very different and strategies are going to evolve differently. And I think that part's more true of this game than it is of XCOM. And I'm probably going to like add house rules to make sure that that happens as much as possible. Anyway, please feel free to ask me any questions you have about Frosthaven in comments. Stop by the stream and ask any like rules questions or anything like that. You feel very welcome. Please do not tell me like, oh, this person plays the game at max difficulty with this thing and their strategy is to do this and this and this. I don't want to know. Let me suffer. Let me suffer.